Exploring the unknown, from conspiracies to mysteries, you are entering the conspiracy sector.
Well, welcome everyone to this very special program. I'm your host, Aubrey Batchelor, and sailing this amazing divine ship of knowledge with me is Chris Jacobs, and you are entering the conspiracy sector. Well, hello everybody. It's February is upon us already. I can't believe we're catapulting into the new year like we have been already, and time's going by quicker than I think it ever has. Boom, 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 boom. Days are gone, weeks fly by, months are gone, and the years tick by. And so I hope your first month in the new year's been good. But like always, we always have a good show for you. I'm always going to say that, but they're always good, aren't they, Chris?
Oh
And
yeah, they
today
always turn out great.
we have a classic show too, a classic one that's going to be good discussion, I feel like. And I want to hear your guys' comments on this topic down below. Let me know your theories. It's one of the most classic hauntings of all time. We're going to be talking about the Amityville horror incident. And Chris, you can just start off by talking about all the strange events that surrounded that place.
Oh yeah, I saw this show about this. I didn't really know a whole lot about it. I'd heard about it, of course, like everybody else had, of course, about the book, and all this,
Hmm.
and also the subsequent movies and series created from it. But people didn't really delve into it. Some people thought it was just a work of fiction, like the lawyer involved in the case. They thought he just kind of spun a tale and wanted to make money off of it.
Hmm.
I saw this on a show called History's Greatest Mysteries, and I'm going, okay, this looks like a classic, Agent of Chaos horror, instilling fear and chaos within a family scenario.
Hmm.
And just like before, you had the guy who committed the murders in the house, which
Ronnie DeFeo.
Ronald DeFeo, yeah, killed six of his family members, and said he heard voices. So what took place with that is, and yes, it does start out that way in where a
Hmm.
demon's trying to really get into the meat of the situation, where they're trying to feed off of it's what's known as looshing, and where they're trying to get the pain and chaos energy,
Well,
adrenaline
that
dumped on people.
Ronald
Yeah.
DeFeo, the night that he murdered his family, it was November 13th, 1974. And, like you're saying, he claimed to have heard voices. That was just the voices told me to do it. They were telling me to do it. He's kind of being driven insane by this, presence, this evil presence that's, possessing the home or him
Hmm.
or whatnot. But yeah, it's kind of correlates with what you were saying there.
Yeah, what happens in a case like that? Say if you have just a family in a home, and say you introduce a demon into the scenario. The way they will try to, like any predator, they will look for prey. Think of them as a
Hmm.
predatory entity like essentially, or like a predator in the wild. Think of them that way, where they will introduce chaos out of order. Where you say you have a family unit that might even be maybe on a razor's edge in some areas. Maybe they have disagreements on things already, uh,
Hmm.
and they pick their prey pretty OCD like. They will hone in on some people they think already have some issues, and well, it makes it easier. It's harder for them to try to manipulate somebody over a period of time that may not have any issues. So, say if you had Ronnie DeFeo, for instance, say if he already had maybe some instability already, or if he had
Hmm.
maybe some fears surrounding something or
Natural
something like,
mental disease that was already pre-existing.
because these entities will prey on something that's wrong, like a disease, or they can cause it too. They could have caused it for him in another place, another time, at some
Hmm.
point, maybe prepped him for that too. I have seen that too. But
Hmm.
say you introduce the demon with him, then you have the family members around that maybe I can already see this because I've seen this happen in our neighborhoods. I've seen it happen all over the place, where you'll start to see disagreements over little things like who left this out on the counter, or who didn't clean this up, or who disagreed on a political issue, or what have you. And
simple little fights that turn out to be, small bickering that turn out to be extremely dysfunctional.
extremely dysfunctional and very hateful and angry. It'll build to that point, and then eventually this
And
demon will
see,
fight.
that's what kind of happened to the family that bought the home, a year or two after the murders, the Lutz
Mm-hmm.
family that moved in. They
Mm-hmm.
purchased the home, at a great bargain, after, and we'll get into that a little bit. But, that's kind of what the ultimate seed of their destruction, other than just the actual, quote unquote, the haunting that was taking place there and the demonic, possession that most likely was taking place there.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, uh, it planted a seed to create dysfunction within the family. And,
Yep.
they even said themselves, we were never like this before. And whatever was going on, the kids' attitudes changed, their attitudes changed, their personalities changed, everything about them changed. They just went from being this classic, American, white picket fence, work hard family, back in the day to
Mm-hmm.
being totally just distraught and dysfunctional for a month and a half out of their life. They completely did a 180 in their lives, just kind
Mm-hmm.
of like that. So yeah, I think that very well could be,
Oh yeah, most definitely. In a case like that, like let's say with DeFeo, Ronald DeFeo, for instance, he could have been. I feel he was like the linchpin that set all of this off. See, these beings will look for a linchpin, like
hmm,
something they can use to really concrete or cement in what they're trying to do.
hmm,
Because those see, humans are creator beings. These demonic entities are not, and they need us to exact their agenda on Earth. So it's or from wherever dimension they are in, whichever species or whichever version of it could be the classic demon, Draco reptilian, to a bunch of other things like Jinn types and all these other things, goblin types. But no matter which type, they do something very similar to one another. Even some types of artificial intelligence, like what we were talking about before. But
hmm.
this particular case, I felt was like the classic, horned demon living in the sulfur tubes, from a volcanic area. But that's why they stink of sulfur when you smell them. They're
Well,
in sulfur tube.
and see, there was several instances, that kind of percolated up. More so, the big thing was the murders, but then the actual reported hauntings, happened with the Lutzes, when they moved in. And there were several instances, like what you're saying, there was random smells. There was rooms, that would have flies in the middle of winter, that like, and was just mysterious, and this strange decrepit, decaying smell that would just emanate from certain rooms. I think it was
Mm-hmm.
the kids' playroom upstairs, and uh, Kathy Lutz's kind of working room loft area. The priest who they were friends with, called Father Manusco, warned them not to go back, and we'll kind of get into that here in a little bit too.
Yeah, what's interesting though about this, even though there's evil with this, it's fascinating to watch the how these beings operate, because then you can turn around and you can repel them when it's like know thy enemy, essentially. Where if
Mm,
you watch their predatory patterns on people and know that they're selecting like the linchpin like that, you can catch this early. Granted, the government also likes to create MK Ultra people to do a lot of the shootings and a lot of the
hmm.
things you're hearing. But demonic entities are usually behind this, or Orion based entities are usually behind a lot of the marching orders behind some of this, just so they can get energy off of this. And this is classic. People know about the looshing process through fear and pain and anguish and such. But with this, say you get to the point where Ronnie DeFeo commits the murders at this point, and then he said to the cops he heard voices and all this. Then fast forward to the next family. What happens is, say that demon will stay in a place they know is a good nesting site. They will hide within the walls of the house. You have mimicker demons, you have the horned ones, you have all these type of things that will
Hmm.
they'll hide, especially mimicker demons. They'll hide within a wall of the house and wait. Essentially, they know it's a good food site. They're going to, like, say if they've committed an atrocity in a house, they'll continue to siphon off of that imprint for decades. Sometimes with battles, it's hundreds of years.
Hmm.
So with war sites and everything, it's hundreds of years.
Hmm.
I found out after 9/11 took place. There were these vampiric entities that kind of hung out in Central Park and basked in the glow of all the whoosh energy that came off of that. These were physical vampire type entities, but it's the same concept like you see in the movie Doctor Sleep by Stephen King, if you see that movie. Accurate to 100% with the way they do that, in that where these vampiric entities are hunting children and whatnot. That's actually accurate for also for disappearing people. But with this, say just after the other family, they weren't quite right because that demon never left. Nobody ever got rid of it. And that priest, he was one person. He could have gotten rid of it had he gone into real trench working, had he gone into being able to reach into the frequency of the being and being able to cancel out or cut its head off, like what I usually do. They're not always easy to get rid of. People always see me, clearing properties and clearing houses, and I always say they're not always that easy to get rid of. You can wrestle them, like from satyrs to reptilian like ones to all of those mimickers, lava cloud like ones. Yeah.
And then that's why the term experts. I know that like the Catholic Church itself has a section of exorcist experts that study demonology and things of that nature. I know that there's a study section for it within there, and then not to mention all the private people out there that do their personal research, their own private research, and people like you and I, that are probably dabbling, and that shouldn't be, some of them, but
there's some that dabble in things that shouldn't, like people that play with Ouija boards and don't open and close their circles.
Don't close the portal, don't close it.
And they don't close it. You have to end the cycle. Like if you're doing a session of some kind, I do this with every one of my sessions. I open it and I close it, because I know if I do not, I'm opening the door for a world of hurt at that point. Do not dabble in magic you have no understanding about whatsoever. You're playing with fire, literally, in some cases. So you can get fire djinn that can come in and burn your house down by overloading your electrical system, all that other stuff. But in this specific case, I don't want to get too far up track, but in this specific case, I could see the imprinting from one incident to the next, because the other one was so fresh. It was right here, with DeFeo was over here, and the other family over here. Then this demon just basically took that energy, imprinted it on them, and imprinted even Ronnie DeFeo's mental state. They can do that on to the other people.
Well, and George even, George is a very clean-cut, guy, third generation land surveyor, family business operated, and he just stopped taking care of himself. And the weird thing is, that house, obviously, with especially the local people of Amityville, they 90% of them knew what happened at that home, and obviously in an area like that, it's going to be a huge talk of the town. And the people that kind of randomly started meeting George when those events started happening thought that he resembled a Ronnie DeFeo. So it's almost like, there's this, like this.
Taking it out of the file cabinet that had already been built. See, these demons have to take it out.
It's like a re-representation of what just happened, but it's just altered. It's slightly
like
different.
Imprinting, like what ghosts do. Like if there's like a suicide or something, they'll empathically imprint that if there's ghosts around, or the area, if it's infected, they'll imprint it. Just like in the movie The Shining, I go to the Shining with Jack Nicholson's character.
Here's Johnny.
Yeah, exactly. It's built on a site. The hotel was built on a site that they kept saying was like an Indian burial ground, or like a lot of wars happen. And you can, a lot of demons and a lot of imprints. If somebody's sensitive to that, will take that file or that copy of that incident, and it gets imprinted onto them, and demons will drop that onto to different people. And I can tell you right now, that's what happened in the Amityville horror incident to a T. It's a classic case of this, from what I can actually see. But also you have somebody's really wiping me there for a minute. I just got this for a second, like this brain wipe. This also happens, folks, when you start describing these things next to each other like this. When you go movie reference, TV reference, historical reference, they start to really nail you like that. But with this incident, I've had some personal experiences that mimic this. There was I can almost certainly guarantee you in the Amityville horror case, the neighbors, these are the cases you don't hear about because they aren't the focus. I can guarantee you the houses nearby or within a certain radius, more than likely those people had arguments themselves with each other. They more than likely were screaming or doing something, some kind of arguing in the area as well, because it spreads. And also talking about opening and closing of the circle, there was an episode of The Unexplained I saw. I'll divert for 1 second, where it was about an MMA fight that was going on, and something in the audience disrupted the ceremony they were doing at the beginning of the fight. When they didn't close the circle properly, this fight in the audience spewed out onto the street, and the cops had to get involved.
Oh boy!
So when it gets to the stage where the cops are involved, the demonic entities or Draco or whomever have spewed this out of control. I've spotted Draco standing in wrestling events, sporting events, trying to siphon off the adrenalized energy. And the TVs that they have, like in WWE arenas and stuff like that, they will ship those TVs somewhere, and those entities will, like the Draco and such, will take the loosh out of the crystals in the screens, the liquid crystals. I came to find that out. But more specifically, this, in our own life, we had an entity at our Granville house before we left there mess with us to the point where we were fighting and arguing. Then what we thought we resolved it. Then we heard the neighbors fighting and arguing, and then we saw some chaos in the neighborhood taking place after that. We hadn't properly corralled it. We hadn't noticed it in time. So but this is, I can guarantee you with an absolute certainty, those cases you're not hearing about are just as important.
And it's not really a diversion; it's kind of related. But what you're talking about kind of reminds me of that dancing plague of 1518. Where like everybody just starts dancing, and it disperses throughout the town, and like people danced for like 3 straight weeks and just started dropping dead.
I hadn't actually heard about that case. That's interesting.
Oh, you haven't? You have to look at that. Yeah, contemporary explanations, like they said is like demonic possession and overheated blood and things of that nature, and mass. So what's the term that not amnesia? That's forgetfulness, but like where people just keep doing it and following. I forget the term right now.
Oh yeah, where they basically just run them down like overclocking a computer processor.
But you have to look at that dancing plague of 1518. Yeah.
See, the witch trials were this way too, where you had some people crying witch, and then the evil forces just kind of spread it all the way up the frigging eastern seaboard after that, like pasted the witch trials all the time. Then it burned its way out after a while. Same concept. It's exact same concept there with that. Now, when you get to the areas where they're describing, blood coming from the walls and all this other stuff, now, can that happen? I've never. I've actually heard of cases where some aliens can actually take one state of matter and convert it into another to make or use holography to do something like that. But more directly, which is easier for a singular demonic entity to do, is put it into the person's head that's what's going on, and the people co-create that vision. And it's easier. It's much more easier to program a person than it is to actually manipulate the environment for them, even aliens. It's easier to mentally go after somebody and turn them into a monster than it is to do something else. Like I said, a linchpin. It's easier to manipulate somebody instead. And that's like in The Shining, where you saw the blood coming off the elevator and Danny's seeing that in his head. So all the evil forces were sticking that in his head. So that's how it was with the Amityville horror. And the flies. Flies are important in this too, because I saw this on Hartley when we lived in Lincoln. This is how I always knew something decrepit was around. We found maggots and flies. And along with the sulfur smell, that's how sometimes you can tell there's demons around. If it's wintertime, you have flies around, I would seriously look for something evil that's gotten into your house, because it seems to be a common occurrence. Maggots, flies, all of that.
Tall tale sign. That's a good.
And that's interesting.
It's interesting that you say that, because along with the flies, there was also like reports of like this dark sludgy material that was covering the toilets. Like the toilets were pure black. And of course the children were getting blamed for it, along with the more disruption within the family. And then the parents never used to be that strict and abusive, towards their kids. But this possession was just creating all this conflict to where all these different events, mysterious events, started happening alongside of the actual honest disruption. So then it's getting blamed for the disruption, when it could be something strange.
Innocents will get blamed for stuff like that, because they want to shame innocents. They want to basically turn them into heartless monsters like themselves. So this applies to any like of the human cults, satanic, like the negative Luciferian satanic cults and Nazi-esque type things as well. Won't go into that too much, but the personality and the tactics are identical. Where they want to break down the psyche of people, and they want to basically turn them into hearts of stone. They don't want them accessing that part of themselves. So also to say what you said was found on the toilet with the black and stuff, that is classic black goo that goes back to the AI components that usually when grays and stuff are around as well. That's usually a telltale sign of them. I would have wanted to also see if people smelled ammonia around. That's usually classic alien abduction when you smell ammonia afterwards, because the little grays stink of ammonia. They're coated in this crud. And what's interesting that you brought this up. There's one more brief personal incident I'll bring up as a comparison. We around the house before we moved out of Granville, we were looking for any objects that had heavier energy on it, something that could be a conduit for anything that would try to target us in the future. And we've noticed some things. And I had this knife that I'd had for many years since I was 11. And after we had a couple of alien abduction attempts at that house, I kept the knife close because I figured I threatened to skewer any grays that came in there. It's like, I'm not going to let you do anything, But apparently I did do something, because I remember chasing some grays out of our room with that very knife. What I went to pull it out of the drawer after I hadn't touched it for several months, and pulled it out of the drawer, and the energy on it was absolutely horrendous. It was horrible, the worst thing we ever found. And pulled the blade out. It had blue slime on one side of the blade. And I recognized this as Zeta blood. The aliens have blue blood and blue gel that, since these are android type beings, AI type beings, their brain is biological and has this blue gel, like hand sanitizer, that is basically their blood and the cushioning between the Terminator components in the center and the flesh. And it's this gel that's in between. It's like basically if you cut them open, you'd see them bleed this like blueberry or blue looking crap. And it's about
blue slime.
It's basically the color of this apatite stone here. And it was all over the blade, and the energy was horrible. And Joanna said, please get rid of this, So we came over here, and my mother and Laverne put it in a bucket of salt along with its sheath, and the blue goo went in there with it. Well, and put salt and whatnot in there with it, and some other things that were infected as well. When Joanna and I went away to go do our big drive to Mississippi before I came back here to wait for our rental place, what happened was, came back in this Lowe's bucket that Laverne had put this in. The liquid, they told me the liquid had turned to black goo. The water had all turned to black, slimy goo. And the blue substance would have been the precursor to the black goo. One of the precursors to the known black goo, or the AI junk that looks like petroleum. And what happens is when you get this stuff involved, this is 100% alien. There's no doubt that this stuff is alien. It has its origins in ancient times, essentially enveloping ships. It did this to our Navy back when there was the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. What you did not hear from the government military reports is this goo came up under the hulls of the naval ships and ate the ship hulls away. This is AI, artificial intelligence, that spans back at least 500 to 1,000 to 1,000,000 years ago. And when the Orions, the aliens, broke into this solar system, I'll give one brief history lesson where they went to other points in time, and they even went back to our primordial times and tried to assimilate different, like, dinosaur forms. This is where you get the Draco reptilians from, when they generated these. What happened with that is, in pockets of the world, this black goo was found. The Balkan Islands, they found it. They found it in the Gulf of Mexico. They found it in, I believe, in Colorado at one point too. And this was ancient. This is why you see the government fracking in places. They're trying to extract this nanotech, ancient nanotech, since the Orions have lost some of that capability over a period of time. They're trying to extract that. Even though they say they're trying to extract oil, they're trying to extract the old technology, because meteorites fell when ancient Asgard was destroyed. That's the the asteroid belt in our solar system, the big planet that was there, also known as Maldek, also known as Tiamat. Some of that goo is what destroyed the planet. So some of that was fused with the rocks, and that's what rained down on Earth, and it got embedded in it with our granite. So that's why some of our military likes to look for that from time to time. But I know I diverted, but that's what that was on the toilet seat, was that very thing. It wasn't just a demon that was there. The horned demon would have been the servant in this case. The black goo would have been its boss, essentially. That would have been its boss, or who was in charge. That would have been Orion in origin, and that horned demon, the agent of chaos, was sent in there to find the linchpin, to find an area, a nesting site to cause the most damage and chaos, divide and conquer, control. Essentially is what essentially it was all about there.
It sounds like every government on planet Earth.
Essentially, yeah, correct. And some of these governments are servants to these same entities. So so it's the same playbook.
The big owl in the middle of the nowhere in the trees. Yeah.
Essentially. Exactly. Essentially, yeah, correct. Like even back to the blood sacrifices of the Aztecs and everything, same difference. So to the now Luciferian cults that sacrifice people, same difference. So I know that was a diversion, but it was also a needed context for why the Amityville horror took place.
I'm glad you went into that. I had no idea. Well, a general basis, but yeah, not that in depth of one. But all these events, obviously led up to them trying to get the house cleansed. And Father Minusco was a family friend, more of Kathy than he was of George, because she was a Catholic and he was something else, I forget. But needless to say, they were friendly to one another. And the father took it upon himself, as the children were of Catholic faith, to be there for the family. So he performs his first ritual to cleanse the home, and hears a voice that says, "Get out." And anyhow, scares him half to death, and he gets plague-like symptoms a few days later. And boils all over his hands, flu-like symptoms, keeps suffering from this horrible fever. And, eventually thinks, kind of something caused it inside the home, And anyhow, things keep happening to the Lutzes, that family division we talked about. Different events keep happening to him. Conflict. Well, they try to get him to keep coming back to do another, please, Father, help, please, Father, help. He keeps kind of insinuating, I'm busy, I don't really want to come back to this.
I don't blame him either, yeah.
And anyhow, he comes back, he performs kind of a remote viewing cleansing through some piece of, divine thing that apparently is used for that, transmitting a healing purpose to a specific location. I think it was like a remote viewing Catholic healing sort of a deal, and so he performed that one. Well, he gets sick again, and obviously, come to find out, in the name of God, in the name of Jesus Christ, only pisses this supposed entity off. Does nothing to do anything to cure it. Well, through frustration, he won't come back, so the Lutzes start experimenting on their own after being tired of all this stuff that's going on with their whole family. And the father himself does some research through the Catholic Church, and apparently you are kind of aware of like the demonic steps that they have to go through to actually investigate a haunting. It has to be deemed a non scientific event that was of an unnatural state. There's got to meet all these specific requirements, like 5 of them for the high diocese to even come in and cleanse the home and do anything. It has to be a legitimate freaky haunting, and it has to pass their background check. And anyhow, but that's a long process. So in that, they start trying to cleanse the home themselves, only activating the activity, ramping it up more.
Yep.
And this is where the fleeing comes in, and kind of the story was created, after all the events. He ended up wanting to write this book, and here we are today battling out the Amityville Horror, the classic movie and the remake. I believe Ryan Reynolds is in the remake movie, wasn't he?
I believe it was. Yeah.
They're both pretty good portrayals. I think the new one is a good portrayal. Actually, the old one's a good portrayal of the actual.
I've only seen the old one. I have not seen the new one yet. So
they're both pretty good with the event of the storyline. So after you guys listen to our amazing little story about the Amityville here, I think I'm going to go back after our episode and watch those movies. It sparked my curiosity because I haven't watched those movies in at least a decade. I know probably 8 years for the new one and 12 plus years for the old one. I know. So, but yeah. So with all these events that we've talked about that have kind of happened in that house, you can see how chaotic and strange that it was. And, we didn't even touch on everything. There's a lot of other minor events, that happened, but you can just imagine what a dysfunctional family would be like under possession, what that would be on an hour to hour, minute to minute basis. We can only summon up a month and a half worth of time here in an hour and a half. So just think of all the minor incidents.
I can see that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
no big deal.
See, from my own personal experiences, I can surmise what that day-to-day looked like. It went from depressive states to disorientated states to arguing to basically some people maybe not always knowing why they're saying what they're saying, but they still say it, sort of thing. And it degenerated down into that. That was more likely on the DeFeo side. And then when it transplanted over on the Georgia side, it more than likely began that process all over again. Like I said, they selected a new linchpin, which was George. So just like there was an episode of Doctor Who in the last Peter Capaldi season where these dimensional aliens were doing something very similar, where they selected one person as a linchpin to basically open up the doorway for them to come in and rewrite Earth's history completely to put them in everybody's favor. And everybody thought the history, these beings were always there. And what happened was they had mentally controlled one person that opened it up for an array to everybody to be controlled. And they had to rewind that back and look for the one person that was first controlled. And then they basically rewound the clock back. If you want to also get rid of these beings, go back in your mind to the first point where you felt you were being manipulated, and in your mind recreate that narrative. If they're trying to put a narrative in your head, recreate the ending. Like if they're trying to say someone's died, like they did that with Joanna and me, where I was standing in the garage and I saw this fictional scenario where she died. What I did was I flipped it around in my head, made it to where she was brought back to life, and in my head I put a set of credits on the end, like a TV show would have, or a movie. That pissed these demonic entities off to no end when I did that. And this is what happened in that show, where they rewounded it to a point in time. Now, people have also, where some of these entities, the more sophisticated ones, the more intelligent ones, not the dumb ones that have the horns. Those are like berserker type ones. The intelligent, hyper-intelligent alien-like ones will find a point in time in your own timeline where in your life where you didn't have as much protection as you do now. And the same goes in Star Trek, where in First Contact, where the Borg went back in time to before the Federation was created, because humanity was weak because they were already divided from war. This is World War III in the Star Trek lore. That would take several episodes to go over that, but it's the same concept where they will go back into your energy, look for a vulnerable time frame, try to exploit that narrative in your head, bring it back into fruition, and try to bring you back to a past state of you before you evolved beyond a certain state. That's why it's not always good to live in the past. So you got to live in the present moment. Yeah. Or live for the future. Like if you're always wanting to, I'm going to do this eventually, I'm going to do this eventually. See, the demonic entities and the AI will hide in the periphery, the what ifs, should be's, and should have beens and could have beens. So they'll try to exploit all of those within your mind and try to separate you from your heart space. So this is essentially how those families both got manipulated. It's basically one of those situations, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So They've been using this for thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years. So on people. So Orions, also to Draco reptilians, to various types of like goblin type creatures. That's another show in and of itself, but that would be more of a Halloween episode right there. But
Yeah.
but yeah, the whole Amityville horror, what I saw in that History's Greatest Mysteries, that's what intrigued me to look into this, because I myself have lived through this several times. I will use one more example before I go off too much on a tangent. I lived in this house in Tempe, Arizona, with another friend of mine and his family. And there was a murder-suicide that took place on that property. And I came to find this out later on. We had to really dig and do research on this. And I was sitting on the couch one night. I was watching their kids. The kids were asleep. I was sitting watching TV, and there was a pool outside. And I saw a kid being flung into the pool. I thought, oh, crap, one of the kids, the toddlers, got out there. Went out, the water was still moving, nothing. Nothing was there. Then, fast forward to maybe a year or two later, I was looking out at the same spot by the pool from a different door, a different vantage point. I saw a man standing outside. And I thought this was the pool cleaning guy that was showing up. I went out, put my hand on his shoulder. He turned around. He looked like a zombie. And this was a ghost of the man that actually had committed the murders. The kids were always telling us they thought zombies were on the property. And I'm thinking, oh, whatever, but now I knew to listen to them. Always listen to your kids, because whatever they're saying is not always imaginary, folks, because they'll pick up on stuff. What they were perceiving as zombies were, in fact, they would look like that. This guy basically, after he killed his wife, he drowned his son in the pool. He took a shotgun to his head. So this is that's very reminiscent of the Amityville horror in its own right. And I can guarantee you all the narratives that were going through that man's head, murderous thoughts, from probably even seeing hallucinations like blood on the walls. He was probably seeing all of this. And I can assume within a degree of certainty that that's exactly what was taking place. And my friends there were picking up on stuff. They would always see this weird black energy coming up out of the center of the house.
Void? Kind of
like
a black void energy.
Yeah, like this black eruption, like
the
energy.
Grudge, sort of. I always think of like the Grudge when I think of like that Sperling. Yeah, and
that's exactly it. That's a good example of
I know that whenever the Lutzes, decided to move out of, I think it was 110 Ocean 12 Avenue or something like that was the street address. But when they decided to move out of there move/flee out of there, apparently it followed him to their to Kathy's sister's house, apparently, and there was some like green or blackish thing crawling up the stairs chasing him, goo or void or something. So that was one final little but I don't know what happened after that. I don't know whether I really haven't researched post. Did it ever stop? Did it,
right.
what happened?
It'd be
but I do have a little
article
that I pulled up if you would like me to read it.
Oh, of course. It would be interesting to find out if you're living in this house now. If anybody's listening to this and you're living in this house, it would be appreciated if you would either put in the comments below or report back to us if there's still anything happening in that house.
Yeah, most definitely. If you're in the Long Island area or of anybody who's lived in that area and, knows of the lore and some of the local stories that pass around, share it. It'd be interesting to see and read.
And also the black void that some people are seeing. Some aliens will appear as black shadow people. There's also a concept called the Hat Man that's also a shadow person. Positive beings like the Sasquatch and other elementals will, but in this case, like what was coming out of the center of the house where I was, and also in this other case, that was also black goo like it was found on the toilet, but they can shift into a different frequency, so they would look like a black shifting void blob all over the place. So that's what that essentially was too.
Interesting. Let me get this ready here. I'm going to go, and this is actually a pretty decent little article. It's from www.hitc.com. It's an article by Kate Fowler. It's "Where Are George and Kathy Lutz Now? Amityville Horror Killer Ronald DeFeo Dead" as well. And Ronald DeFeo, come to find out, died on my birthday in 2021, I think.
Oh, wow.
Ronald DeFeo, the murderer that led to or inspired, depending on what you believe, Amityville Horror, has died. But what happened to George and Kathy Lutz? State officials have confirmed the death of Ronald DeFeo, who died on Friday while serving his 25 years to life prison sentence at Sullivan Correctional Facility in New York. No cause of death has been given yet. In 1974, Ronald DeFeo shot and killed 6 of his family members in a large Dutch colonial house in a suburban neighborhood in Amityville. At the time, he pled insanity and claimed voices told him to do it. And the murders went on to inspire the story of the Amityville horror book, movies, and George and Kathy Lutz moved into the house a year later on. What happened to George and Kathy Lutz, though? In December 1975, George and Kathy Lutz moved into the house they bought for a steal of a price. The only catch, it was the setting of a mass murder less than a year ago. The couple moved in with Kathy's 3 children from a previous marriage, but it took only 28 days before they fled the house. Within days of moving in, they claimed to have noticed strange activity. There were odors in the house that came and went. There were sounds. The front door would slam shut in the middle of the night. I couldn't get warm in the house for many days, said George. And that was the other thing. He couldn't get warm. He just burned wood for days and days and days and had a fascination with burning wood and couldn't get warm. The alleged happenings only got stranger. They claimed to have found strange gelatinous drops on the carpet. Kathy Lutz allegedly transformed into an old woman, and George even claims to have seen her levitating. Eventually, the family fled, leaving behind all their belongings still in the house. Years on, the Lutz worked with author Jay Anson to create the Amityville Horror, using 44 hours of tape recordings from the couple. So that's kind of the basis post, but I'd be interested to see how long these hauntings actually afflicted them, past moving out.
We could have followed them. We could have easily followed them, yeah.
And then there's this possibility, the hoax theory that's always out there. As with most paranormal claims, there exist believers and non-believers. George and Kathy Lutz were met with their far share of disbelievers and those who labeled it all the commercial hoax. The later owners of the house had previously attempted to debunk the story, claiming some of it didn't add up to what found when they moved in. While the very priest depicted the book reportedly claimed he didn't experience any of the paranormal effects the book said he did. George Lutz remained adamant in his story of what happened, but admitted that some features of the story, including the famous green slime, were added as embellishments. Where are the Lutz family now? Kathy and George divorced in 1980, and both have since passed away. Kathy died of emphysema in 2004, and George died of heart disease in 2006. Their children have intended to shy away from the horror spotlight, specifically daughter Missy. However, Daniel Lutz appeared in the 2013 documentary Amityville Horror and remained adamant that the hauntings happened. While son Christopher Quarantino claimed at the Seattle Times that although the book was not a hoax, it was extremely amplified. He regularly clashed at his stepfather and moved away from the family at age 16. Now the house at 112 Ocean Avenue has new owners after being bought in 2017 for $605,000. Reportedly no longer represents the iconic structure shown in the movies and has been entirely renovated. So maybe the activity is still going if it's renovated.
Well, see, that's the thing. That's one of the smartest things they could have done, because transforming it from one form to another would have kicked up activity. I can guarantee you things were happening while they were doing it, and probably happening to the workmen and the all the contractors and everything that were there. I can guarantee you something was going on. They probably had scratches, everything, all of that. But at the same time, transforming it would have nulled some of that. It wouldn't have nulled all of it. It would have transformed it. And it would have kicked up for some time, and it could have settled. And they probably, if they were smart, they would have gotten a shaman or someone in there to cleanse it again. But transforming it is probably one of the smartest things they could have done with the Amityville Horror House. You also said that one guy said he made up the thing about the gel and the goo. Somebody could have, and this is just a theory on my part, I can't exactly prove this, but this is the style of the government when it comes to some of these things. Somebody could have intimidated him to say that part was a hoax, because that part was something like a gaslighting, like the Men in Black do. I can guarantee you, if there was some alien involvement, the Men in Black weren't too far behind, but you more than likely don't see that because he more than likely caved. Now, I can't prove that. That's based on the behavior of the government when it comes to this. I know it's not part of that story, but where the black goo and the gel and stuff comes in, I can guarantee you to some degree that this is just my theory. Before some people think, oh, where can you prove that? No, not exactly. Just based on the behavior of these government agencies, They could have coerced and gaslit him into saying that portion was a hoax, even paid him some money possibly. But that's just
we need a story here.
Yeah, that's just supposition on my part. But that's just based on the behavior. That could have very well been the scenario to take place there.
How can we make Hollywood more money here?
Exactly. And the government will also, within the scripts of movies, you always see me doing disclosure in the media type stuff, where they will insert a writer or somebody in a writing team that will disclose classified information to shows, TVs, and movies and everything. So, and also to cause controversy, somebody would have either tried to say they hoaxed it, just like with the crop circles, like the two guys that claim they made all the crop circles out there. That's bull crap. But at the same time, to add for and against controversy to something so it confuses an incident. Like if somebody wants to try to partially classify something, like if there is aliens, they will cover it up with a ghost incident or some kind of haunting as well. There was an incident, I cannot remember the name of the hotel that this took place in, where someone woke up in the middle of the night. This was a celebrity, woke up in the middle of the night, and they had an orange. That was
out in Colorado, wasn't it?
No, this one was in a different state. I know
Stanley Hotel.
There was the Stanley, where stuff like this has happened too. This was based on, that's what The Shining was based off of. But then you had another one. I cannot remember the name of it. If people remember this incident, please tell me the name of this. But this man woke up in the middle of the night and saw this orange orb floating over him, big, like basketball size, like orb. Then he went downstairs the next morning and asked about this. He said, "Oh, I saw this orange orb, and I saw this the energy felt weird, and it felt really strange in my room, and I couldn't move." He was paralyzed when he saw this. And this man walks up to him on the other side of this bar and said, "Oh, that's the suicide room. A girl committed suicide there." So it diverted the guy's attention to a ghost story. Next time he went to look for the old man that told him this, they said the person didn't work there. What happened was there were aliens in that hotel that were doing something underneath that they shouldn't have been, and they got caught. Some people say, well, why did the aliens show themselves if they were trying to remain secret? That wasn't the case. He woke up during an abduction event, and he caught them red-handed. So some people are immune to some of the paralysis stuff and things of that nature. Like I am, they don't even try it on me anymore. But it's he caught them. So more likely, spirit of some benevolent spirit, more likely was saying, "Hey, stupid, there's something happening that you need to be aware of." And subsequently, he caught the aliens, and more likely that man that he was speaking to was one of them. So there are instances where they will divert an alien abduction case and cover it with a haunting case. Even though in the Amityville horror case, I feel it's both, where you have some alien involvement and you have an overwhelming demonic haunting type of case. I feel it's both in that case. That's just where my intuition is leading me in that. But the reason I was fascinated when I saw this, the reason I wanted to do the show to begin with, because I wanted to show also the progression of how demonic possessions and demonic oppression can affect generations of families. Even though alien abduction can take place in over generations of one family, this was just a selection of a linchpin. It could have been something from ancient times too. They could have selected somebody that maybe had some traits from their ancestry, or past lives. But in this case, I feel they just selected somebody that had maybe a weakness that they were exploiting, widen that crack a little bit. That's what it feels like to me with that, and I'm getting validation as I'm talking. So it's like, but in that case, it's a classic case. It's retold over and over again, like the Roswell incident is for aliens. But this, even though that had nothing to do with aliens, that's a show in and of itself right there. But this, that might be a subject for another conspiracy sector. But but this case, I felt needed to be looked at again. Because it was basically horror lore now, but at the same time, like with things like the Roswell incident, Philadelphia experiment, that's another one we could look at. But this is
that's a strange one.
Yeah,
that's a very
things of that nature. Things of that nature need to be looked at over and over and over again, because people get annoyed that they show these things like ad nauseum, and I can see where they're coming from. But at the same time, you have to keep taking a second and third and fourth look at these cases, because they're not what they appear to be, at first glance. And this is why I
judge
wanted
a book by its cover.
Exactly. Do you have any other articles on this, Aubrey?
No, that's basically where I was going to take it out. If you want to bring some questioning in, and we basically covered it all up and went into the post apocalyptic versions of Amityville. And now, God rest all their souls. I think most of them are probably all gone now that were involved with the original deal.
Yeah,
And
I
minus
know
the
there's a son
children,
that
the children, but
there's a son that they showed on that show that's still alive, and he got kind of fucked up because of the whole thing. He's full of PTSD and trauma because of it. He's one of the he's the boy that they showed in basically was in the house with George, was describing what George was doing and everything. He showed up in that episode. It was very fascinating. Now, a similar case would be the Villisca Axe murder house. That would be a show in and of itself too, in Iowa. And the Sally House in Beatrice, I believe that's another one. But all similar type of cases that kind of fluctuate around the same types of themes. So murder, chaos, divide and conquer, horror, depressive energy, all of that. So and basically trauma. So I think this is a good place to bring in Isaac or whomever is going to speak. I know Isaac was eager to talk about this as well. So give me a second here. Yeah. So I think we have a whole plethora of incidences we could do shows on. So classic ones that should be revisited. I think that's a good theme to go off of. I don't know what you think about that one, Aubrey. Classic ones to look at.
There's so many.
There's a whole library. Okay, Isaac. I know you're here. Since I had to put my communication arc equipment away for the move, I created another skull to keep around for him to.
Oh, that's cool. Ashy looking too. That's cool.
Yeah. See amber on the bottom and red jasper and crystals and shungite nuggets in the center, along with copper right there and shungite top. So
yeah, that looks cool.
And right where the third eye is, it seems to be the copper focus right there. So focal point.
Nice design.
It's always interesting how these come out in the end. So you never know how they're going to completely appear. But that ended up being really interesting. Put the shungite little cap in first because I ran out of space and other molds for the shungite itself. Left it dry and then built the rest of the skull, and that's how that came out. So
looks sweet.
Yeah, and that's why I chose to keep that one. I like the black top on it and everything. So, okay, Isaac. Yeah, I'll shut up so you can come in. Yes.
Oh man,
he does that. He goes, "Shut up so I can talk." Okay, yeah. But all right. Okay. Through the crystal, please, if you would. Yes, this is a curious event because this is one that needs to be looked at closer, as he said. And yes, aliens were involved in this, very much like he's seen in his own existence and mine as well. Since I'm around some of these government, let's just say, a-holes on a regular basis, trying to raise the vibration around them. I can honestly say, yes, there was some involvement there, and they did overemphasize the haunting situation. It actually was more of an experiment, as he said, with a linchpin, someone who was unstable to begin with, and they wanted to create chaotic energies as well. The demons were unleashed. They were not necessarily randomly there. This was a targeting. And some agencies that are involved in the occult, very much like the Nazis, have their occultist paranormal units as well. So there are government units that do work in this, and they do keep some of these entities in some kind of stasis, as it were. They can do this. They can actually have people conjure demons, as you would say, across the void. They are quite adept at this. Every world leader has their occultists either in an astrological form, like an astrology expert, which they can be good or bad, believe it or not. And they have their own wizards and, let's just say, warlocks around them to either cast spells in their favor, dump the person's own karma onto other innocent people, or to basically protect them from other curses and the like, so they can continue on with this Kabbalist agenda. And throughout history, there have been advisors to kings and queens, and that are court seers. Some are evil and vampiric, while others are good. Your classic Merlin and Arthur story is a great example of this. But in the Amityville horror case, before I divert, this was a targeting. One could say this was an experiment, but at the same time, they wanted to cause as much chaos as possible, like you see in the now with false flags and distractions on TV, and your MK Ultra program, by which a lot of these school shootings and hospital shootings, and even the Virginia Beach shooting years ago, was exactly this, mixed with alien tech and psychological Nazi-esque abuse. This is essentially the birth of the MK Ultra programs, Monarch programs, and the like. This particular individual, Ronnie DeFeo, was unfortunately one such victim. You can just feel sorry for people such as this, but once they cross a certain line, they're in complete lockstep.
And why are certain people like Ronnie DeFeo more targeted than other people by, certain entities and things of that nature?
Sometimes it's their past lives. Sometimes it's their genetic history. What did their father or their grandfather or their great-grandfather do in their lives? This is how some people are selected for the secret space program, you see. Some are selected to become some of these monsters in your society. Say, fast forward into your modern day with the shooter in the school, for instance, or one of them, where the cops would not go and arrest the guy right away and angered the parents. You see the chaos that ensued even from that portion of the incident, and where children died. This person was actually in a laboratory and was selected to do this. And as you say, how are they selected? Is again family history, energetics, and sometimes what they are looking for are traits very much like themselves. Like say in your latest Halloween movie, for instance, Halloween Ends, where Michael Myers saw similar traits from himself in the young guy. You see, it's very similar. They're looking for narcissistic and already implanted evil traits. He mentioned the show History's Greatest Mysteries. Well, the actor Lawrence Fishburne played a person in CSI that said he had a gene called the warrior gene. This also was subsequently within the murderer in the series named Haskell. They were identical in that warrior gene. Lawrence Fishburne's character used it for good, used it as a focus. Haskell used it for evil. It's very much like your Dexter, you see, whereas there are these traits, but instead of just randomly being chaotic, his father told him to aim it at others like himself. This is something very similar. They're looking for these particular traits, either in a family history that they can cultivate out, or they look for someone who already possesses it. Ronnie DeFeo was actually sadly both.
Interesting. So what are some of the ways a person can identify if they have attachments or mild possession or major possession? What are some of the telltale traits that they might be affected by an attachment or a possession?
Well, some of which, if you watch their behavior, it can go from say an anger from like 0 to 60 as you would say, or a depressive behavior, or behavior uncharacteristic as to what they had maybe moments or days before. This is essentially how you would tell an insertion of a demonic entity, AI intrusion or influence, or alien intrusion and influence, mentally, of course. This is also an entity can drop into the person, possess them, as you would say, or a ghost can do the same, where they can shift the person's personality. The quickest way to know is if it is a sudden shift in personality, sudden shift in behavioral traits. This is the quickest way to see this.
Just like the Lutz family, specifically George.
Yes, indeed. This is exactly what happened. He was selected as he would call another linchpin. This is a perfect example. A linchpin, by definition, then would then influence others energetically around. Just like you can have good linchpins where you could have people come in that are ahead of the curve, say evolutionary wise, and help guide humanity as a linchpin. This is the antithesis of that, more of an agent of chaos linchpin for an area, a person, a family, or just overall concept that would cause and spread fires of chaos throughout an area.
So to leave everybody out with some grand knowledge, if they think that they have possession in their homes, or they think that they have an attachment to themselves, what's something that they can do to help that matter?
Well, in that matter, you have to know yourself well enough to know what you are not. I know that sounds cliche in this instance, but it is the basic tenet of whether you are possessed or not. If you feel odd, strange, or even if something's being beamed from outside to try to oppress, possess, or within, know your center, know yourself, and know your own behaviors as they are being cultivated to do ilk. This is the basis. Stay grounded and remain yourself at all times. And if you are a person that doesn't know who you are yet, get into the state, and I know this sounds more overly simplified than it is, get into the state where you know exactly who you are at all times. This is one of the most ultimate protections of all time, and also doing shadow work, doing getting rid of the traits from your family history and family traits, and as he calls viruses in the DNA, or ilk from past lives, knowing what is not yourself, what is not your soul's path, or what is not necessarily good for your soul to hold on to, and your mind and your heart to hold on to, and never let your heart dull or gain lackluster. These are the ways to avoid these situations.
Nice. Well, thank you, Isaac. Thanks for popping through. That's good information.
Yes, thank you. And it always is good to be here. And the reasoning why he has his own personal experiences and mimicking these others is to actually inform in this area. The same with yourself and your knack for research in this particular area, despite anything else on the side that is taking place currently.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Yes, thank you.
Until next time.
Until next time.
How'd it go?
Yeah, I know there was other things you wanted to bring up too. There was a report you wanted to show as well.
To leave everybody, to do a little bit of a 180 on the Amityville subject. A little bit something happened here just above town. I had a buddy who came up and showed me a video yesterday. This is synchronicity at its finest. He walked outside to smoke a butt 3 o'clock in the morning, and he looks up and he sees a UFO in the sky, a strange light turning off, appearing, vanishing, reappearing, making really erratic movements, top, bottom, left, right. And for about a minute, it played peekaboo, made erratic movements, shot straight up into the sky, and it was gone. So something very strange. Craft that human being, a craft of which, if it was human being occupied, they wouldn't survive the G-force. So that leaves two things: extraterrestrial craft or remotely operated man-made super vehicle.
Or a vehicle with inertial dampeners in place. And that's a real thing. I know it's a Star Trek term.
Excuse me. Hold on. Super aircraft. We said vehicle,
Super aircraft.
Yeah.
Now,
until we have flying cars, then we can call them vehicles.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when it's a flying car at that point, it's a vehicle. But also inertial dampeners will make it so that you don't feel G-forces. So a human could be in there. It's just that inertial dampener is so that you don't become a stain on the back wall of the craft as you're trying to pilot. It was a term also used in Star Trek Voyager, where, and in any of those other Star Treks, where their inertial dampeners failed in their ship, and somebody tried to activate the warp drive, and the captain went, "No, we don't want to be stains on the back wall." So it's like we got to wait till we repair those. Those are crucial. So yes, that can be. That's highly advanced tech. Are humans capable of it? Yes, but the concept of an inertial dampener is true. So
I don't think most of them are capable of it yet. They'll kill each other with them.
Exactly.
Oh, there go the dogs.
Of course, they're going crazy during.
Somebody probably knocking at the door. Who knows? Intruders, I tell you.
Oh yeah,
But
classic distraction where somebody's probly at the door or walking past or something like that.
just as
Yeah.
long as it isn't the spirit of Ronnie DeFeo,
Right. Yeah.
I'll crucify him right away and tell him to get the hell out of here.
hmm Uh, exactly. He could have very well moved on. He could be wandering. I don't know. It could be either one of those things. I managed to find to slightly end this on this note. I managed to find the soul of Charles Starkweather one time,
Huh.
and he was still wandering as a ghost, believe it or not, in the Belmont area where the Hartley house and where I lived and the Fugate
Hmm.
house where that was. He was still wandering in that area, believe it or not. So
Hopefully sometime, perhaps we can all get together, find his grave site. I know there's people who know where it's at. Not be disrespectful or anything, but do live ghost hunting at the live location shoot again, like we
he's
did at Government Hunt's
actually,
Tomb.
yeah, well,
We'd
he's
like to do
actually,
that for everybody, It just is so difficult since we live on opposite sides of the states. We only get together once every year or two. So doing live location broadcast is a little difficult, but we'd like to do that in
would
the
love that. Yeah.
future sometime. Yeah, most
He's
definitely.
actually buried next to two of his victims in Wyuka Cemetery.
Well, that's freaky.
Yeah, I saw the grave myself. He's actually buried next to two people he murdered. So,
Ew.
if they don't tell you, the officials at the cemetery will not tell you that he is there. They show you. But I can honestly say from seeing the grave myself, he's buried right next to two of his victims in Wyuka. So, uh,
Hmm. That's
yeah.
interesting. Yeah. Talk about hopefully they torment him in the afterlife.
Right?
Uh,
I've seen those types of things before, where other ghosts will, when they see their murderer, they'll gather together and torment them. I have actually seen that before. So, like victims will go after the murderer.
hmm.
So, more than likely, that's what happened to him. So,
Hmm.
that's not to get off subject, but yeah, I think that's a good ender to this show today. If you have anything else to add, Aubrey?
I think you hit the nail on the head. Until next time, everybody, I hope you're doing well. Hope you like this episode, and let us know your thoughts and theories on the Amityville horror incident and anything else that's happened to you strange in between the last episode and this episode. Like always, share this show with your family and friends. We love getting the word out about these strange topics. A lot of people are afraid to talk about these sort of things, but guess what? It's all about connecting the dots and getting the ultimate picture. So until next time, hopefully you can get a piece of that puzzle for yourself. Adios, everybody.
Yes, and now you are leaving the conspiracy sector. Bye bye, everybody.
Bye bye.
Okay, just got up before, we're leaving here, and weird dream popped up. Of course, after we go see Avatar, that triggers SSP memories. And what happened was I feel this was something SSP related because the emotions surrounding it. Also, the fact I just had my massage and adjustment that tends to open up the third eye more. Getting the spine aligned and everything aligned correctly, body aligned correctly. That includes eating the right foods too, but you get the idea. This came through just like the Lystaria information did. So something's getting ready to integrate, and it's been pretty rough emotionally trying to quantify or codify whatever this is. And it was in a facility, but it was in Nebraska. And this was in the time of, it seemed almost like in the time of like Charles Starkweather. And there were stories about how they had to hit him a few times with the electric chair to kill him. Several, in fact. And this was at that point. It was just like, it was weird. This was that event where they were executing him, but at the same time, they couldn't kill him. But they damaged his brain. And all of a sudden it was like they lobotomized him. It was similar, not a cut, but the electrical field. And I was there watching this with this other blonde woman in a suit. No, skirt suit. And she was wanting to know my opinion because the other scientists said to the commander that said, "Sir, this guy's not dying, but he's coming in with a different name." And they're like, "Okay." Then they looked at me for an opinion, and I said, I can't remember the name they used, but I said, "Okay, forever past this point, he is this. I would suggest, you could even put him back out in the public, and he's not the same person." And everybody's like, "Yeah, okay." So I don't think the history went as they said with that incident, where it was this epic ending, whereas his last words were, "Oh, that bitch should sit on my lap. Should be sitting on my lap." And if you watch the movie Murder in the Heartland, it's about him. Accurate. But I don't think it went as they said it did. Now, I don't think his ghost is around. I don't think there was an injustice there, because whatever he got, he deserved it. But, so that wouldn't be an injustice, that would be justice. But, for the people he killed, I always thought it was a little fucked up that they, buried him next to two of his victims in Wyuka Cemetery in Lincoln, a big cemetery in the middle of the city. They built the city around it, but in the older parts of the city towards downtown. But yeah, weird. How this is SSP related, I don't know. But the guy in the chair was him, or at least somebody that looked like him. And brown hair, brown eyes, tall. More than likely had German descent. With a last name like Starkweather, yeah, it sounds like he would probably would have gotten it was like German or Austrian or something like that. Probably came from a German dialect. But with or because it was Ellis Island, but there's a nephew of his that exists now that gets a lot of flack and carries the last name. And me and a friend of mine always told him, "Why do you keep the name?" He goes, "Well, just because my uncle was stupid doesn't mean I'm the same way." The same goes with Bin Laden's niece. People heckled her. She wanted to have a music career and everything, and she kept the last name, and people were heckling her after 9/11. Never did get anything going because of that, because people were stupid. But change your name also in that, in cases such as that, I would. But that's me. Of course, you have to stand by your family name, but you get the idea. The reason I think that's relevant is because, this has to do with family bloodlines, and more than likely either that was an ancestor of mine or me. And since the SSP and alien abductions follow ancestral lineage, it's only like a certain family name or a certain family set of coding, and also a certain set of past lives. As I've said, they can take the amino acids and the genetic material, turn it into ones and zeros, and view it on a screen, both genetic memory-wise and past life-wise, and that's how they select you for the programs they put you in. If it's a mix, it's a mix. If it's a warrior, they mostly warriors like me on other planets, like in Avatar: The Way of Water. Accurate to 100% what was going on. Not to the planet or anything like that, but the concept and what they did. The mining, the soldiering, all of it. Accurate 100%, 110%. But or they select you for pseudo-spiritual, like stigmata and all this other stuff, getting religious crowds distracted, fake miracles and stuff like that. You get the idea of bleeding statues, stuff like that. Even though those are aliens controlling those devices, and it's quantum technology. That's another recording. But fake miracles. That's what we said also on our episode, Miracles with a few question marks. But anyway, I believe this is something fragmentary that was about me as well. But that Starkweather died back in the 60s. So he went on his killing spree. And my mother ran into him at the candy store up the street, which is now a liquor store next to what was Save Mart, but is now under a different name. Yeah, and Avatar, it's more than just, people keep saying it was the subjugation and exploitation and genocide of indigenous peoples. Yes, I agree, but that was more than that. That was the distractive answer, so that people would be distracted by the race part of it. It's the SSP part of it that is the biggest area, or the main message in this that people are missing, unless they were in the programs. If you were in the programs, you know exactly what I'm talking about. People like Tony Rodriguez, myself, and others were in these situations. Well, anyway, this is what I've run up against with this, where something is trying to reintegrate. But this facility room, there was like the electric chair, the chamber, people watching, and then there was a console and a console. And it still looked similar to that in his execution. But the scientists kept coming up. It was like they were running an experiment on him previously to this, and he just wouldn't die. It's like his personality changed completely. So I don't know if this was him. Or it could have been a similar situation to Starkweather, but it seemed related to him, like of his family lineage, or the family special in some way. So we'll find out eventually what this is. But I wanted to make sure that this was known, so that this was related to the SSP, because this was really, really important. And we even lived in the area where the Fugate house was, in the Belmont area. That's where he went on his killing spree. The Crest station, or now our quick shop, was right up, like not even 6 blocks from the Hartley house. So that's why that neighborhood was so haunted, thanks to that shithead. Sheridan Boulevard, that's where he killed the maid, went out in the countryside, killed the other people. Look up the story. I'm not going to go through the whole history, but you get the idea. They based the character in CSI, Haskell, off of him, where Lawrence Fishburne gets stabbed by him. And it's this warrior gene that's in both of them that they focused on in the story. And it was something that essentially the gene that shuts off some empathy, and you either go evil or you go intellectual. And they showed both. Lawrence Fishburne, intellectual, sometimes temperamental, but then they showed Haskell, which was evil. He was Charles Manson and Charles Starkweather put together in it. I believe this is a quality that the SSP is looking for. And they're trying to cultivate this warrior gene. Look up the show CSI Vegas. When Lawrence Fishburne was in it, you'll get what I'm saying. So this is where I'll leave it, but this is what happened. So it is 6:46 a.m. Arizona Standard Time, Thursday, January 26th, 2023. Thank you. Okay, I gotta get this out. I believe that Starkweather and them were of the same type as, say, Jack the Ripper in the 1880s, and also H.H. Holmes. All these killers were put out there, like Charles Manson, all that, were the same as the MK Ultra people. As like the school shooters, the hospital shooter, all of these MK Ultra crap. The same thing with the gang, where, like I said, the facilities that they were created and tested in, to basically through sex and violence to put them out there. I believe they're brainwashed and put out there. Not that some of them are innocent, just like the one in Idaho. That was basically a satanic test or a sacrifice of those people. And the thing of it is, what I was feeling, and also a friend of mine was feeling, you got to retain who you are. If you were put back here and they're trying to get you to do something, you have to find your true core, I am self, and remain there and go rise above the programming. You cannot turn into the heartless shit that they want to turn you into. They've tried it with me and a couple friends of mine, and I broke free from it. Several of them. They're living their life. You've got to find time for the peaceful side and the business side. Home life and work. Balanced. So when you're in balance, they can't get you. And even if they target, it's more like degrees of resilience. It's not like everybody doesn't get hit with the same mind control. Those that are rising out of it get hit harder and targeted. But it's that there's more resilience to the targeting, AI and or telepathy. It's not that you're getting hit with less. You're becoming more immune. That's an important thing to remember. You have to remain who you are. in all of this and not turn into the PTSD-ridden murderous shit that they want you to do. I believe Starkweather was one of these people now. Same thing with H.H. Holmes, even though they're 100 or so years apart. I believe 130 or so years apart. Still. And then you have Manson, you have all of them. And the fascination with this culture. I understand the psychological aspect. People want to understand this, like Tuvok did with a character, a Betazoid character in Voyager. He wanted to understand the logic of the psychopathic, psychosocial side. And he said, I find this disturbing, these feelings disturbing. It's like, oh, there has to be a reason why you're doing it. He goes, no, there is no reason. It's just how I am. And it's like that. People want to analyze it and figure it out, which is good. You want to see where it leads. But you have to take that leap into they were created, brainwashed, and put out there. That's the MK Ultra. Just like when they brought out the stuff about the MK Ultra project, it was only like this. And that's what the Men Who Stare at Goats is the movie about that, beginnings of that, and the remote viewing project. Post Stargate program. Wonderful movie for an example like that. I'm not a huge fan, but it's a great example. But that's what I wanted to get out. And I just had this rush of feelings surrounding this. I've started to slip majorly myself, but you have to recenter and grounding always. When what we've said about grounding and remaining who you are in the I am presence. That's how you get past this. And creative passion, yes, as well. Moment of non-time, yes, as well. But you also have to fight it. You got to know when your emotions need to be reintegrated, not separated, not pushed away. Reintegrate what you need to reintegrate. And I had a nightmarish night because of that thing about that Starkweather scenario in the dream. I know it's a memory now. And the woman I was seeing was some kind of handler. But when and where, I don't know. It was an example. Maybe I was decoding the person in the electric chair as Starkweather because I was seeing a similar scenario. Or someone that looked like him. Because I was obviously not alive then, except in the previous incarnation. But you get the idea. So, well, when I decoded, I think it was just somebody that looked like him. I was seeing that project in the works. Something similar. So, I'm not sure when it was. It would have had to have been sometime in the early days, like in the 90s of some sort, or 90s, early 2000s. So towards the middle of my stay in the 20 back. So it is probably 2000, 2001, somewhere in there. So that's when my friend Curtis and I got our first apartment. So it was in that time frame in Lincoln. So same area as Starkweather. So it is 8:18 a.m. Arizona Standard Time, Thursday, January 26th, 2023. Thank you.
Okay, what's really interesting though is, I'll see if I can find the recording I did on Starkweather. I elaborated that, like with Michael Myers, it's more like the personification of evil. Same thing with Charles Manson and all of them. And I had another recording I'll try to include in this when I locate it. But it's more like what was said in Halloween Ends with the personification of evil, and he was basically training another one that was like him. That's how some of these people are selected that we were talking about, like DeFeo, like Starkweather. DeFeo, I think, falls under that category perfectly. Ronnie DeFeo, I think, really does. It's an underrated, even though it's a famous case, people don't tend to associate them with the others, and I feel that's more of an MK Ultra sort of thing. And of course, they enjoy it. People like that, like the young guy in Halloween Ends. It's the same thing. They were basically saying that's why they killed the young guy and Michael Myers in that. If you want to see a great example of this selection kind of process, I would say Halloween Ends is a good example, or at least in part. Not government facility type selection, or it's more of a demonic evil selection, and that's kind of what we were getting at with the Amityville horror, Oh, and as for a funnier side of this, with Isaac, for instance, the movie Drop Dead Fred. I don't know if people are familiar. but it's about a being that a little girl finds that he plays practical jokes through her. Basically kind of selects her. She grows spiritually as a result of this and inside, but where she's kind of blamed for some of the practical jokes, saying Fred made me do it. The voice, basically like saying, like DeFeo saying the voices made me do it, but this is more the funnier, good side of it. There were just mischievous entities too that will just play jokes. Elementals play jokes. Even benevolent forest people play jokes. Like Fuma walked up to the house one time, smacked the side of the house one time, and howled as loud as he could, and then ran up the rocks over here. So, and he went hee and ran. That's funny. And what happened with Drop Dead Fred, there's this famous scene from the trailer where you hear the little girl go, "Hey, Grandma," and then hit her with paint. And later on, Fred lives in this box. He looks like a normal guy in a weird Harlequin, or elaborate suit, kind of like a Joker or Riddler type figure in his own box, in his own realm. Kind of like a genie or a djinn, but, and genies and djinn can do this crap too, in the evil side of it. But the box gets misplaced, and she grows up and then finds it again and then releases Fred. And he goes, "Oh, you've grown up," and basically sees where she's at in her life and helps her improve some things where she's at in her life as an adult. You could say this is kind of like manicuring children from child to adult, if you're going with the evil side, with manicuring these psychopathic, narcissistic creeps. But like with, I always have to refer back to the Pinboard, a MacGyver episode, with the people that were placed by the Nazis. And police, judges, neighbors, co-workers, officials. Now you kind of have to go with that. It's kind of like that. Those fall under the MK Ultra, or people creating chaos in society, like some of our officials doing stupid things like not arresting criminals, or just making dumb decisions, or being old and dotterly. You know what I'm referring to. That's how you can usually tell where it is. But with this, those chimes are rather loud today. It's kind of windy out here, but here at the Prescott Canyon house here, before I leave again. But this, but what happens with Fred is eventually he says, I have to go. I have to find another child, And this was a benevolent version, prankster version of this, but there are, of course, like what I said, some of these malevolent entities will spot them earlier on and cultivate them, or government or aliens will spot them earlier on thanks to lineage, past lives, and will spot them earlier on and cultivate them. And the secret space program is intertwined into this tale. But with this, he disappears and she doesn't see him again. He pulls what I call a Pete's Dragon. At the end of the original Pete's Dragon movie, he says, "Oh, I can never come back and visit. I can never see you again," type of thing. And we always cried bullshit on that one. But then he goes, "I gotta go find another little boy." One could argue the darker end of it, but this was more the lighter spiritual end. Same thing with Drop Dead Fred, where you see this other little girl that played a practical joke, got set up for playing a practical joke, but was laughing. And the young lady is looking at this girl, sees her holding the hand of somebody, and knew Fred was there. So he wasn't gone, he just was gone to her. So I find that very interesting, kind of like a guide moving on to somewhere else and guiding someone else. One can also argue the whole gang stalker thing, where the evil side of it is where there is one person that programs an AI to target people and does multiple people. And if you were to encounter these people in real life, they would say, "Oh, I'm just doing my job." That is more of the evil side of this. That's the targeting cabalist military crap. The other is light. So you have both these things at work here. But it's a great reference. A practical joke I will say that Isaac pulled on me is a young lady appeared in one of my sessions totally nude. And wasn't expecting it, but I just carried on. And I mean, this person was nice to look at. She was pretty, but I didn't make one comment. I acted professional and went through the hour session. Had 2 more sessions with this person.
where by the third one she was uncomfortable. My mother and Joanna surmised that this person was just trying to get my attention in that way. But Isaac took credit for some of it, where he said he set it up that way, or got the person to take their clothes off as like a way to make me uncomfortable, which I could see that. And he did that with a friend of ours as well. I won't repeat what he said to this person. I will not do this. He was trying to basically get a rise out of me or embarrass me in some way or make me uncomfortable so I would grow. See, I was always, as a younger man, I was uncomfortable with some of the sexual stuff. I would get embarrassed and stuff like that. When he came along, he basically said, okay, get your head out of your butt. This is, or lighten up, essentially is what he would say. So that was his way of seeing how I would adapt to a situation like that, or in case of our friend making her uncomfortable along with us. She got past it, I got past it, Joanna got past it. So that was the point of the whole exercise. And then he basically, I said, oh, you set up a booby surprise for me. And he goes, yes, you're welcome. Yeah. So he took credit for it, and I knew he was being truthful. I sensed his signet all over the place. But making me more comfortable with that, just in case any surprises would pop up in the future, induced by him or not. But the whole point, reason I'm adding this in is there's a benevolent side to that selection process, and there's a not so benevolent, malevolent side. So, so that's why I added that in. So I thought that was important to keep in here. One thing I will add is that the reason they moved Starkweather is because people kept vandalizing the old grave. That's why they moved him to Wyoke next to two of his victims. This is why they didn't want it known, because people would do it again or cry bullshit, and I still do cry bullshit. So this is why I brought it up. I just wanted to add that point. So it is 12:53 p.m. Arizona Standard Time, Sunday, February 5th, 2023. Thank you.